Well, it's been a historic week, and we have a big Monday coming up. The teachers in Oklahoma have been arguing for more pay, and on Monday it kind of comes to a head with a big walkout. I'm joined by Ben Felder to talk a little bit about some of the issues that are still percolating on this. Talk a little bit about where we are in last night the legislature took action, met some of the demands. Fill us in a little bit about where they are.
Yeah, well, as most of us know, a few weeks ago, the Oklahoma Education Association issued a series of demands, over $800 million in spending for next year that included a teacher pay raise. They were seeking a total of $10,000 for teachers, $200 million in increased public education funding, pay raises for state employees, health care funding, a variety of services. The state legislature this week passed a series of tax increases on cigarettes, motor fuel, gross production tax. It came around to over $400 million, and it includes a $6,000 teacher pay raise. It includes a slight increase in public education funding, around $18 million in kind of general spending, $33 million for textbooks, so some, but not the $200 million that the OEA was asking for. And really, when legislatures passed it through, the Governor Mary Fallin signed it with a bill signing ceremony. She doesn't have that for all her bills that she signs. They really saw this as a historic moment, and that they had averted a long-term teacher strike, or a teacher strike at all.
Not quite.
But not quite.
I mean, it really has caught some people off guard. Well, okay, we've settled the strike. They've given them their pay, but they're still talking about walking out on Monday.
Yeah, as the bill was moving through, as it got past the House, which was kind of seen as the major hurdle, and was going to the Senate, the OEA had said, hey, we're not really happy with this plan. It's a good first step. But they had kind of come off a lot of their absolutist language of the past. It was unclear if there was going to be a walkout on Monday. April 2nd, Monday is the date. They said, hey, we're striking and we're not going back into school until all of our demands are met. I mean, from day one, that's what they had said. But they'd kind of come off that language. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think they're trying to take stock of their own members and where teachers were at. Once the governor passed or signed the bill into law, or actually once the Senate passed it, the governor said she would sign it. A lot of school districts said, hey, we're going to be in school on Monday. This is a good first step. We risk kind of alienating the public and frustrating lawmakers even more if we are out of school. But over the last 24 hours, we've seen more teachers say, no, this is not good enough. This is not what we wanted. And really, a lot of the talk hasn't necessarily been about the teacher pay component. I think a lot of teachers have said, hey, $6,000, we'll take that. But we haven't really restored a decade of funding cuts to classrooms and to public schools. And a lot of schools, especially some of the biggest in the state, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Mustang, Edmond, are planning to walk out on Monday, and it's unclear if it's just going to be a one-day event or a multi-day event. And I was thinking as I was coming into work today that if we had like a meter on how likely a walkout is, a multi-day walkout. At one point, I think when the union made its demands, it felt like, wow, this is 90%. I mean, they're serious about this. When we entered this week and the legislatures looked like they were going to pass something, I think I would have put it down to 20%. I mean, it really sounded like they were backing off of a walkout, or at very least backing off any kind of work stoppage that would go past Monday. Today, if you ask me what are the odds that we see a walkout past Monday, I think I'm almost back to 90%. I mean, I think the momentum has really been building again for a lot of teachers to really try to put some more pressure on the legislature.
So the legislature approved $400 and some million dollars. They asked for $800 million. Talk about the historic nature of giving $400 million and what a difference that is from where we were just a short time ago.
Great point.
With an all Republican-controlled legislature.
So put aside the OEA's demands for a moment. The last time there was a teacher strike in Oklahoma was 1990, and that was on House Bill 1017. Was a series of tax increases that included a pay raise for teachers and education funding. Teachers held a 4-day strike, not just for the bill. The bill had already passed. They were striking to get the emergency passed, which made it effective immediately. They knew that there was going to be a challenge. They wanted the money to start being collected immediately. They had a 4-day strike. The legislature eventually approved the emergency clause. That was a historic moment. However, the response from some who were anti-tax a couple years later was to put a state question on the ballot that passed 640, which required the legislature now to have 3/4 of its members approve any tax increase. Since then, we've not seen one. It is hard enough in a conservative state like Oklahoma to get a majority of lawmakers, especially in the Republican-dominated House and Senate. It's hard enough to get a majority to approve, but to get 75%, to get 76 out of 101 members to go along, not just with Republicans, but because Democrats, who kind of are sometimes referred to as the most powerful minority in the country, because while their numbers are small, they're needed for tax increases. And while Democrats often say, hey, we favor tax increases, they haven't always gone along with the Republicans' plan, when they have an ability to kind of flex their muscle. So we have not seen a tax increase. We've seen tax decreases in recent years. I mean, the legislature has aggressively cut taxes.
Well, tax increase in an election year even.
And in an election year, yeah, great point. I mean, all of the House is facing re-election, half of the Senate is. The governor's not. I mean, she's termed out. But those that are running for governor,
said they would not.
Most all of them have said, most all would, especially on the Republican side, have said that they would not increase taxes, which tells you that, at least for elected officials, the pulse of the electorate is still that they are anti-tax. So this week was historic, and there are a lot of teachers that say, hey, I'm not into patting the legislature on the back. They still haven't made up for the years of cuts that they've made. Those are the opinions that are out there. But it does not change the fact that it was a historic moment for the legislature, and it was a big, heavy lift. And I also think it's important to point out that just a couple months ago, or in February, was the Step Up plan. We saw some of the biggest business leaders in the state, the oil and gas community, come to the table and say, we are for increasing taxes to shore up a big budget shortfall. They came close, but they couldn't move the ball across the goal line. Fast forward, mainly because of teachers, we've seen the legislature do something that they were unable to do several weeks ago when they had support from some of the biggest captains of industry in our state. That's significant. So, and I think a lot of teachers recognize that. There are a lot of teachers who recognize and say, hey, we're going to be back in the classroom on Monday. But there are many, especially like I said, in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and some of the bigger districts that are saying, you know what, we've got the momentum right now. We've got the attention. Monday is going to be there's going to be a national spotlight on Oklahoma, especially coming off of West Virginia and the teacher strike there. And so a lot are saying, hey, it's not good enough. And when are we ever going to have this moment again to try to push for this?
And one more time, drive home the point for us one more time, which is explain why they got a raise. Why aren't they going to be in the classroom? Just one more time.
Well, there are some who say the raise isn't good enough, but most of the teachers I've talked to, most of the chatter that I've seen is that it has not addressed the cuts to public education that we've seen over the last 10 years. And while student enrollment has grown in Oklahoma over the last decade by about 9%, funding to public schools state funding has been cut by about 8%.
So bottom line, what you're saying is it's not just about the pay we get, it's about the amount of money that you give our school to pay for all the programs and services that we need to provide our kids.
Exactly, and I've got a story in Sunday in which I talked to a teacher and she says, listen, I feel like a sellout if I just take this pay raise and I don't advocate it anymore. She's like, for me it was, yeah, we want an increase in pay. I mean, Oklahoma teachers, depending on which list you see, rank last or second to last when it comes to average teacher pay. And this is a significant raise. I mean, it appears that it's going to put the state kind of middle of the pack, second in the region. It definitely makes some improvement. It's not going to change overnight how many teachers are going, how many students are going to college to become teachers, or there's still some teachers that are leaving the state. You can't reverse that overnight, but it is a prominent step forward. But yeah, you're exactly right. When it comes to the funding that goes into public schools that pays for, classroom materials, technology, just basic repairs to the building, counselors, support personnel, extracurricular activities, all those things. Over the last 10 years, when you adjust for inflation, there's some reports that show that Oklahoma has cut its state funding for public education by 28%.
And is among the leaders in the nation in that.
The biggest cuts in the nation.
Yeah. Well, it's a complex problem, obviously. It's an issue that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. We'll have some people there Monday, obviously, covering the events at the Capitol. So be sure to check out that coverage at News OK. Thanks for joining us.